Hey, what's up, amigos? Commander Jaime here, and we're gonna do a Chaos deck profile today. If any of you know, I actually own Link Joker. I specifically own Messiah and Chaos, and I've had them for over a year. One of the reasons that I picked them up was to have practice against the matchup. Um, Pretty much almost every Vanguard deck in this game has to consider the Link Joker matchup because of the lock mechanic. The lock mechanic itself is pretty powerful because rearguard decks can be hurt quite a bit, especially ones that rely on multi-attacking. So if you can't really have access to your front row, then you can't really multi-attack, and if that's what the clan does, it really hurts them. So yeah, let's just get into it. So for the starter, I play Carbon Still. He is free, and as soon as you write to grade 3 and lock something, he's active. You can get any grade 1 or less Starvator, and he's useful at times where you can get Metonics, Zinc, and so on. You can even get the Peridigan crit trigger to lock something in the back row, and then it goes back into deck right away just to get another lock in the back row kind of thing. Or you can get the other Forerunner that sometimes people play. I can't remember the name, but so that's why I play him. So grade 3s, play 4 Crisis and 3 OG Breaker. So Crisis is actually pretty good. On place to Vanguard, and then when you G-Strike with the Starvator, you can Counter Blast Starvator, and your opponent has to choose a card to lock. Some people don't like it because you give the opponent to choose. I understand that, but if you're playing it pretty well, they're gonna end up with a locked field no matter what. So it's actually nice because sometimes you really need to lock something and you don't have the photon, or you don't have another card that can lock something, and just being able to just stride and have access to that is really good. The second skill is like the OG Breaker, where if something were to be unlocked, you can retire it and draw a card. It is basically like a once per turn, but it's very flexible that if you see it the first time, you don't have to activate it, but you can still activate it later. It's not like the once per turn clause, just like a Night Rose's GB2 skill. So that's still flexible, and it hurts decks too when you're just retiring their stuff and you're drawing a card. So that's good. You're maintaining your advantage, and over time you'll get more advantage. And the OG Breaker, primarily, he's also a decent ride because of his Limit Break 4, where you just Soul Blast a Starvator and draw a card for the same basically reason where a unit is locked. But if 3 units were locked at the same time, you can Soul Blast 3 Starvators and draw 3 cards. So he's much more, you can say he's much more greedy in that sense. So it's super helpful. Sometimes in the late game, if you're on Crisis for the whole time, you can rewrite the OG Breaker and then try to clear the board their next end phase, and then when it comes to your turn, you just like GB8 because you clear the whole board, and then if they're at 5 damage, the GB8 is gonna rip like 5 cards from their hand. So that's another cool thing. I mean, his lock skill is hardly used, but I mean it's there if you really need it. I guess a good example, if there's like a title on board and you really need to lock that card, then that's like the way to go. So far, I haven't had any problems with 7 grade 3s. What's nice is the new Stride Fighter for Starvaders. You can check the top 7 and search for a Chaos. So you have a way of grabbing your 3s too. So that's helpful. Let's see. I should put it down here. So I'm still messing around with these 3 slots. You could put in the 4th slot for this too. I am playing more grade 1s, so I took out a grade 2. But before we touch this, I guess let's cover the basics. 4 Photon for sure. Like I said, he's free. He's a card that you could just put on the board and lock something. So your Vanguard is going to do the initial locking most of the time, and then you follow up with your regards to start locking more of their board and deny them of their own board. So, and Photon being free is really nice too. And I play the new one, Globalidia. I don't know how to say it, but that guy is really good. So what he does is when he's placed on rearguard, if you have a grade 3 grader Vanguard with Starvator in the name, Counterblast 1, your opponent chooses a card from their drop zone and puts it on their rearguard circle as a locked card. And then if there are 2 locked cards on their field, it gets +3 and +3. It gets the second +3 if it's 2 or more cards. But you'll get the initial +3 just by doing the skill by itself. So he becomes a 12k attacker, and if you have the 2 lock cards met, then he becomes a 15k attacker, which is actually a good number with the new grade 1 Matonics, which is like an 11k booster. So 11 plus 15 makes 26, which is hella pressure. Another thing to note, he specifically says put the card into a rearguard circle. It doesn't say open rearguard circle. So it's a really good card to get rid of resist cards on the opponent's side of the field. A lot of people think that resist gets around lock, but with cards like this guy, he helps get rid of those. Which is scary for the other decks too, because like now it's like, crap, my resist units aren't getting away with this, and they're gonna be like somehow retired by this kind of effect, which, yeah, so it's good pressure. And the other thing that he does is that he puts a card on the board as locked, so now you have more cards to mess with locking purposes for later on. A good example is the Stride Glue Ball. Glue Ball gets massive as hell for the whole front row. 3k for every lock card, and if your opponent has almost a full board, that's easily +9, +12, or even, let's say 5 times 3, +15 to the whole front row. So it helps in that regard too. And then for these guys, I am still messing around. How do you say this name? Malopotin? I think that's how you say it. She's really good in what she does. She is like a mini Chaos Universe. Counterblast 2, they call a card from their hand. Not call a card. They put a lock card as locked onto the board. To an open rear guard though. But still, it's just like Chaos Universe. The only issue with it is it has 2 counterblasts, specifically Star Vader, and as well as an AK base. So some people don't even like her for those 2 reasons. There are times where you just want to rip a card from your opponent's hand to make it even harder for them to guard. Being able to do that, I think, is worth the extra counterblast. And you're also getting more cards onto the board that you can lock continuously later on your turns. I'm still messing with the ratios. Some people play 3, 4, or just play a few of the numbers, just like right now I am. Some people don't even play Colony Maker anymore. The reason I'm still teching 1 is because she has utility in the sense you can grab any grade 1 as well. Or less too, just like the Forerunner. So if you need Soul or Counterblast, you grab Zinc. If you need a big booster, you need Metonics, you can grab that, and so on. So it's there for the utility. You are deck thinning too, as well, so you're getting a higher chance of hitting a drive check, a trigger on your drive check when you go into your battle phase. So that's also worth to note. I don't know what I'm going to do, if I'm going to stay at 11 grade 2s or bump it up to 12. I'm just going to have to keep playtesting at this point. There is Penrose now, which is the new Stride Fodder for Star Raiders. And they got the new PG as well. And they got a new grade 1 Mantonics as well. And so this is my grade 1 lineup. So with the Penrose, like I said, it's a Stride Fodder. If you have a Star Vader Vanguard with its original name, and you're striding to a Star Vader Stride, then it counts as a Stride Fodder, which is nice because one of the things that Chaos didn't like is either riding their Stride Fodder Destiny Dealer, or if it goes to the damage zone, and now cards in the soul or in the damage zone require Star Vader in the name. So that can contradict sometimes. Not often enough, but it's still annoying. But now having our own Stride Fighter helps a lot. And the second skill is really good for Chaos, where when you pitch it for a Chaos Stride with your original name Chaos Vanguard as well, you get to Soul Blast 1 and check the top 7 for a Chaos card. You add it to your hand. So what's key about that is that it actually negates the discard cost for Deluge. And that's important too, because you don't really want to have a small hand in Chaos, because if you don't really have a board locked up and you have a small hand, there's a good chance you're going to lose. So that helps in maintaining your hand advantage though. And to go along with that is the new Starvader PG. So when you PG your Starvader, if your opponent has two or more lock cards, you can draw a card. What's really nice is basically you pitch two cards for this essentially, and then you'll get one card back in return. So it's almost like you only use one card from your hand in total. So that helps in that regard. And somebody mentioned that what's neat is that you get to immediately draw, which can come up against like, I guess, Die Kaiser. So if you're trying to multi PG that one attack, it could potentially help you out. You can draw into another PG, and then you PG again, and if they still have two lock cards, you draw another card, and you add more to your defensive part. So I haven't had any issues with counterblasts. One of the important things in KS is making sure you are managing your resources well. Soul and counterblast. So there are times where you don't want to use the counterblast for a certain unit. So you'd rather reserve that for later on or for a different unit. The same thing with the soul. You just got to be careful. But not too much problem with the soul anymore, especially if Crisis is your Vanguard. Because Crisis doesn't soul blast for the draw. It just does it. So you should have plenty of soul. So your soul will be used by the Stride Fighter and the Strides that don't require a counterblast, which is actually also nice too. So you're just going to manage your resources. With that helping is Zinc. Some people have played 4 Zinc. I am still on 3, just like the original build has before the clan booster. I haven't had the need to go feel like I needed a 4th one. At least the way I'm managing my resources, on average, Zinc might go off once per game. And if I really needed a second one, I have 3 copies, so I'm bound to see a second one eventually when I need it. So it can be bumped up to 4 to see it even more consistently without worrying it. And I think people play 4 because they took out Colony Maker too, so it's a lot less. It's harder to get her when you really need her too. So maybe that's why. Yeah. So with the new one, Metonics Dragon over here, it's a GB1 restricted card. When you boost and your opponent has 2 or more locked cards, it gets an additional +4 for that battle. So it becomes an 11k booster, which makes numbers with Globidia, the new grade 2 I mentioned earlier. Makes the 8k promo hit over the 16k mark. So it's no longer like an 8k being boosted by a 7k, hits 15, you're short 1k. Now you're hitting 11 plus 8, that's 19, so you're past that 16k threshold. And then, of course, if you hit, you get to Omega Lock something. So it's basically like Voltline over here, but just like, in a sense, a GB1 stronger version of himself, essentially. And I'm playing 3 copies because I actually want to keep seeing this guy as a booster because it applies so much pressure for your columns without relying on Glue Ball. So if you really need to Deluge or KS Universe, you still have that pressure on your Rigard columns. And you can even put it behind your Vanguard. So your Vanguard will be 26 plus 11, that's 37. What's also nice, you can put it behind a grade 3 as your Rigard. So 11 plus 11 is 22, makes a good number as well. And so on. Voltline, I am still teching. This was part of the reason why I'm playing 11 grade 2s, because I changed that to this kind of slot. And the reason I only play him is because he's not GB. So if you ride to grade 3 and you're locking something, and it needs to be Omega locked, especially a clan that doesn't have access to some form of unlocking, G-Guard or unit or something, then that's key. That way you have that 1 unit guaranteed lock for an extra turn. So having that pressure, when you put this behind Vanguard too, more than likely they're going to take the Vanguard hit because they rather like drop a 10k on your Rigards or something like that early on, and not try to drop too many cards right away against your Vanguard. So that helps in that regard. So if I were to take out Voltline, I'd probably bump up either Zinc or bump up the grade 2 ratio and work with that. So with the triggers, I have been messing with 10 crit, 2 draw, and of course the 4 heal. So a lot of Chaos players before this clan booster were playing 12 crit. Part of the reason for that is because Chaos wasn't aggressive enough to finish a game. You're able to control pretty well but you had this issue trying to finish your game. And in the sense, people were compensating with crits. So if you like double crit or triple crit early on, then you just win. If your opponent's at 4 damage, you are lethal because you could just rip 1 crit and put them to 6. So that helped out too. And if you rip double crit and they guarded the Vanguard, then you just put a crit on each column, and they have to guard everything in that sense, forcing them to drop even more cards for that turn. So, but now, play testing more about it. Somebody had mentioned that they're playing more draw. So some builds are playing the 8 crit or 4 draw. And then the one of the recent ones that I've seen is 6 crit and 6 draw. And I get for the reason for that. And it's for helping getting your combo pieces. It's helping for making sure you're doing your plays, especially if you're trying to deluge often enough or whatever, you know. And sometimes your early game can be hard sometimes, especially against a deck that's like Battle Sisters or something. So having that draw trigger hit the damage zone or on your drive check that early on helps a ton, and it makes sure that you're consistent on your plays too. So having more draw in your trigger lineup usually ups your consistency as your combo pieces. So people have a lot of different preferences. I'm not going to debate which one is better. I've already tried 10 crit and 12 draw for the longest, and I'm going to try to switch it up to the 6 crit and 6 draw to see how that works out. I think it'll work fine too, because Deluge and Glue Ball are very aggressive in the sense that Deluge is ripping 2 cards from your opponent's hand compared to Universe where it's ripping 1. So that's a big thing. And then on top of that, if your opponent's at 4 damage or less, you're dealing a damage by taking one of the locked cards and just put them into the damage zone as face down. So if they're at 4 damage, you put them at 5, and now it's like, well, a crit's not really going to help me at this point. So, but if I see a draw or a heal, then I get actually the benefit for that drive check still. Plus, it helps you build up your hand, so you're defending against whatever attacks they may be, so you keep grinding it out. And eventually your opponent will run out of resources, Counterblast Soul or hand, and you'll just win. So that helps in that regard. Definitely play the Peridium Shift Dragon. He goes back to deck to lock a back row if your opponent already has a lock card. It's an act, and it's good to not deck out. It's not as much of a problem in this new build, I've noticed. And I think it's because you don't have to use Zinc as much as aggressively too. So that helps in a sense. With Zinc just ripping 2 cards from your deck by soul charging, that could take a turn from you, especially if you're doing it twice or 3 times a game. So if you really need to put it back to deck just to not deck out, or add the crit pressure back to your deck even more, then that's for sure. And then just vanilla crits. You could play the Messiah crit, but you honestly don't go into any Messiah strides often enough for making it worth, so you might as well have 5Ks. If you really need to drop them down to help boost like an 11K to make 16 or just make numbers, then that helps. The draw trigger, what's cool is that now they have a Starvator with a skill, which is basically the Margot clone skill, +3 to something. So that helps nice for having the flexibility if you really need to make a unit hit a number and have the soul at the same time. So a good example, if you have Malepotent, making her 11K, and then you add soul to your own soul, and you could be using that for Deluge, or you could be using that for a Glue Ball. So that can come up. And the heal trigger will soul blast as well. Any card from your soul to basically unflip when you do the Lacus Karina, or Lucas, I can't remember. I think it's Lacus Karina. The G-Guard, so that can come up, and yeah, it helps. So with the triggers, like I said, I can't really tell you what's the best trigger lineup, but just keep play testing, and it might depend on your meta too. If you have a very aggressive meta that has like early aggro, then maybe the draws will help more compared to the nasty amount of crits. Let's see, put this over here. These are my Stride units. Yeah. Oh yeah, these are 2 different units. So for the KS lineup, you're still playing 4 KS Universe. First Stride them, you rip a card from your opponents. And if you have 2 or more face-up while resolving that skill, then you get to lock another rig guard on their field. So that's pretty nice, and it's still a nasty stride. The fact that you just rip a card from your opponent's hand and then you do your turn is like, hey, I'm gonna, apply this pressure on you. Deluge is even nastier, where you Soul Blast. You don't even Counter Blast for this guy, and then you flip any card in the G zone, and you just rip 2 cards, and then if they have 4 damage or less, one of those you choose any of their lock cards, and it goes to the damage zone. So you could put some annoying card that is like, I'd rather have that in the damage zone instead of the drop zone. So that kind of thing. And Deluge is GB3 as well. So if you G guard, you can't Deluge right away, because I think Deluge would probably be even more busted if you can do that. But you can do still KS Universe, and at that point you would rip a card from their hand and then lock another rear guard just for 1 Counter Blast. So that's super good. You're going into these often, and so your Penrose Stride Fodder will go off to try to search for a Chaos card, and that would help negate the discard cost here, and it give you a +1 if you do that, basically. And for the other Starvator Strides, this guy is Glue Ball. This guy is really good. You Soul Blast 1, and then you flip a copy of himself, and then for every card you have face up in the G zone, you lock that many cards on your opponent's side. And then at GB3, all your Starvator front row units get +3 for every locked card on your opponent's side of the board. This is holy shit. Ideally, once you start hitting 3 locked cards, you're giving your front row +9. So you're making units like Full Time by himself swinging 18, Malapaten swinging 17. If you have 16k columns, they're hitting 25. So if you have the other threshold push, so if they have 4 lock cards, you already passed that 26k mark. Makes Malapaten by yourself +3, making it 11k, and then 14k, and then 17k. So it helps with numbers just a lot. It reminds me a lot of Sanctuary Guard Dragon, where it's like, in a deck like Link Joker, specifically Chaos, that's pretty nasty. This is the finisher that you can definitely go into, where you have depleted your opponent's hand pretty well enough. They're at 5 damage, their resources are low, and you just go like Glue Ball. I'm like, well, I have these huge ass columns that are hitting around 30k column, and he gets the boost himself too. So him getting a +12 on a 26k power up, that's what, 38? Yeah, 38 with Triple Drive. That's no joke. Really good card. I highly recommend playing for, and to be honest, he's generic, so this is going to be in any Starvator deck. Glendio's, Infinite Dragon, whatever. So, pick these up while you can. Amnesty and the GBA. The GBA, for sure, like I mentioned earlier, you can clear the board with the OG Breaker and then try to drop as many cards from their hand, depending on the damage they have. If they have 4 or 5 damage, that's fantastic. You just end the game that way. With Amnesty, it's there for the mirror match to help out. If you don't have a heal to G-Guard to unlock your stuff, then you kind of might have to rely on Amnesty to unlock your stuff and apply some pressure. You don't always have to go into Amnesty in those turns. You might end up going into like Deluge or Universe or even Glue Ball or something. It just depends on the scenario, but it's there for that reason. I don't know if it'll stay, but I have it just in case when you don't have the heal trigger. So you can unlock your stuff with the G-Guards. With the G-Guards, got 2 of the Lacus Carina, 2 Destiny Guardian, and 1 of the new guy, the Sharjin. I don't know how to say his name. The Fighters Collection, 1 Lacus Carina, is pretty good. GB1, kind of last one, flip a G-Guard. When she's placed on Guardian Circle, lock as many cards, as many of your reguards, and then your opponent locks that many reguards on that side. Someone actually pointed out, if I look closely and focus, that if you do, choose up to 3 of your reguards, so you choose up to 3 of yours, and then you lock them, and your opponent locks 1 of his in the back row for each card that was locked. So it gets around resists in the back row. So cards like Melania or Orphea, if you're facing Aquaforce, for example, those will get locked. And that's why people have bumped this up to 2, because it's becoming much more relevant against those matchups. And it can fuck up combos, especially like Night Rose if you're facing like a Negabrone in an essence. And any other cards that are nasty in the back row, a low roll, all that stuff. Um, the Destiny Guardian playing it too. This card got a lot better. With the Link Jokers running around now with the clan booster, it is super helpful in the mirror. You unlock 2 of your units and you get plus 10, and it's just like, whoa, I get to do stuff next turn, and because it's during the battle phase. If you really think about it, most of the decks don't lock during the battle phase. There are a few cards that can lock during the battle phase. So if you time it right, then you just have a free front row still against the mayor, and then you still get to be aggressive on your turn. So that's huge, and it's plus 10k shield, so it's a good guard power. And so yeah, playing 2 against the mayor helps a lot. And then one of these guys, what he does is Soul Blast 1 when this unit is placed on Guardian Circle, and if the number of lock cards is 2 or more, then you can draw a card. I'm trying to focus on that thing. Oh well. There you go. So what's neat is that it just says number of locked cards. That's kind of what I wanted to show you. So if your cards are locked, it counts. So having that extra card draw just by G-guarding a big rear guard column or something, that helps in that sense. So yeah. If you're piloting chaos, it can be very devastating against the opponent, and if you do it just right, resist units don't matter. I was playtesting against the new Dava stuff with this, and even if they have like 2 or 3 rear guards with the resistibility, if they have 2 specifically, you can actually lock the whole board still. And I think I'll do a separate video showing that. But yeah, it's just, you could really hammer down some clans. So I still have this deck so I can practice against, and it helps a lot too. So that way when I go to an event, I know exactly what I need to do every freaking turn against chaos, whether it's I'm going first or I'm going second, and if we're like this late game in the stride turns or early on. All that stuff helps. The more you know of your matchups, the better chances you have to top. So, but yeah, so that was my chaos deck profile. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for any talk about this deck itself. And I'll see you guys in the next video, and have a happy holiday. See ya.